Hello, I'm Peggy Shippen. I've been a member of AAUW for over 30 years. I'm currently a dual member of the Salem, Oregon, and Laguna Beach, California branches. I'm entering my fourth year as member of the AAUW California Branch Development Committee. Volunteers First is an awareness and leadership program for member engagement. It took a village of AAUW California and Oregon leaders to create, produce, and introduce Volunteers First. However, only because of the encouragement, passion, time, and talent of these two women who worked tirelessly with me was Volunteers First created. Looking back on our time as employees, I'm sure most of us admired the success of managers whose philosophy was to guide a company's profit operation and decision making within a positive employee culture. How many of you, though, have heard of a volunteer organization having a philosophy to guide its mission, fulfillment, and decision making within a joyful and fulfilling volunteer culture? Well, nor had we until we did. And this is our story of how we came to develop Volunteers First. Each principle of Volunteers First was an aha moment for us. And I'm here today to share those aha moments with you. I hope you will find this awareness to be as enlightening and helpful in your AAUW volunteer endeavors as it has been to ours. Nonprofit volunteer organizations worldwide have been facing a steady decline in members and volunteers for over 30 years. As early as the 1980s, researchers noted fluctuation in civic engagement, formal volunteering, and donating. The U.S. Census Bureau noted a significant volunteer rate drop in 2006. This map shows the rates of volunteerism in the U.S. in 2024, 16% in the lighter areas, 41% in the darker areas. You'll notice volunteerism is higher in low population areas. Sadly, research that could have helped volunteer organizations slow down this trend was not available until recently. In the meantime, struggling along, trying to reverse membership decline, AAUW and other member organizations adopted a business leadership model for raising money, recruiting and retaining members. The model seemed to make sense, and it was familiar. Surely, if the business model succeeded with marketing, attraction, and retention of employees, it would succeed with volunteers. Under this model, AAU developed wonderful programs, served women and girls successfully and measurably, but membership remained in steady decline. We simply could not, we still do not understand why this was happening when our mission and values and programs are so popular and necessary. Well, since 1881, AAUW has prided itself in being unique by conducting research. AAUW research provided us with a fact-based guidance for legislative advocacy and program development to educate, benefit, and empower women and girls outside of our organization. Remarkably, in 2020, the AAUW California Board, under the leadership of President Sandy Gabe, decided it was time to research the reasons for AAUW membership decline in California. They embarked on a research project covering all 100 branches. They asked former active members and leaders why they left AAUW. A significant number responded. The results were disheartening but enlightening. Other than moving or illness, a significant number said they left AAUW because they felt unwelcome, disconnected, and or just became disinterested in participating, even for the cause. Sandy Gay then challenged the AAUW California Leadership Development Committee to find a new and different, but credible and effective volunteer leader program that would address these findings. Researching this project led us to Barry Outland, author of Engaging the Head, Heart, and Hands of Volunteers. Barry volunteered to help us. He consulted with us several times, and soon thereafter, he consented to our using his book to develop an awareness program specific to AAUW. Barry was instrumental in enlightening our understanding of the why and the how of volunteer and leading volunteers. First, Barry had us look inward at our volunteer motivators. They looked a lot like those on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Barry suggested our collective intrinsic motivators as volunteers are likely the same motivators as those of most of our AAUW members. Barry suggested all AAUW leaders have to do is to discover, then focus on satisfying the intrinsic needs, those motivators of our member volunteers. Then adjust our leadership practices accordingly. We searched for credible research that might support Barry's theory, and here is what we found. In 2020, South American volunteers who were seriously concerned about the drastic decline in volunteerism worldwide decided to conduct a study. They interviewed volunteers worldwide. The results: universally, people volunteer to satisfy their intrinsic needs, the needs that money can't buy, the need to altruize, give of themselves and make a positive difference, the need to socialize, engage with others, the need to learn, the need to self-actualize, to have opportunities for introspection and personal growth. These intrinsic personal needs, or combination of them, are unique to each volunteer, and it's what research says motivates volunteers to serve. In the 2023 Australian study, Australians expanded on the South American study and compiled many research studies of volunteer leadership from around the world. They identified specific behaviors of leaders of volunteers that resulted in an increase in volunteer retention, engagement, and leadership. In a nutshell, the Australian study concluded worldwide, the most successful volunteer leaders, the ones that reported high retention, engagement, and leadership, made facilitating and building relationships their number one priority. The Australian study also identified specific leadership behaviors one needs to exhibit to facilitate and build relationships. These specific interchangeable behaviors fell into 4 categories: care, connect, support, and recognize. I'll touch on these each from the research. Effective leaders of volunteers care about each and every member all the time. They passionately and sincerely get acquainted or reacquainted with new or renewing members and any member who is not engaged. They do this in person. They discover what moves each member personally, what interests and activities brings each member satisfaction and joy, and what each hope to gain by being a volunteer. Yes, Every member expects to get paid in an intrinsic way in exchange for giving their time, talent, and skills. Getting to know these motivators is key to a member's engagement. Successful leaders of volunteers discover and keep rediscovering, even over years, what each member generally hopes to gain: altruize, socialize, learn, or self-actualize. These are the payoffs volunteers expect. If not met, they will look elsewhere. Effective leaders of volunteers connect members. After getting to know new and unengaged members, leaders are then equipped to connect them to other members involved in activities of similar interest. The need for connection is powerful, especially today. Research shows a key difference between very happy people and less happy people is good relationships. Connecting is facilitating and building relationships with and among members. Assigning tasks does not facilitate relationships, nor does it serve the purpose of putting the wants and needs of volunteers first, at least not at this stage. AAUW California leaders have found circles of engagement provide members with an opportunity to connect with members they don't know, to learn about each other, to develop understanding, and learn how to talk to each other in new ways. Barry Altman suggests branches limit leader and speaker time to 50% of the allotted meeting time, using the other 50% of meeting time for formal circles of engagement. This is different than social time that occurs before and after a meeting. Using the 50% of the allotted meeting time for circles of engagement gives members time they wouldn't otherwise have to think and reflect, to interact and engage in meaningful discussions with each other, much like we do when we're making friends. This is fulfilling and it bonds us together with each other and our cause. Circles can be used in as many ways as your mind create. AAUW California branches are using circles to quickly help new members mingle, get to know each other, and pick a mission-related committee of interest. They have met in circles to talk about an array of subjects, from serious program ideas and yearly planning to answering trivia questions about influential women in STEM as an icebreaker in member orientation. Or during a fundraising event, such as a get-to-know-you icebreaker and motivator, just to show up. This one was by Zoom. Small circles provide safe and inclusive space for members to get to know each other by talking about challenging life experiences, ethnic and generational and cultural differences, leading to awareness, common interests and values, or ideas for new programs with new leaders forming naturally. Effective leaders of volunteers engage in and model mutual support. Supporting members is following up with each member personally. It's simply touching bases with each member who has participated or not in an activity, assessing their joy in participating, learning whether or not their volunteer experience was interesting and satisfying. Observe for participation and encourage members. Recognize their presence and contribution. Confirm afterwards by learning, was the activity a good fit? Did it give her joy and a sense of fulfillment? What would make the experience better for her? Touching base is the single most critical, proactive, effective, and caring way a leader can take to sustain a member's passion for volunteering. The principles of Volunteers First can effectively be applied to community outreach and collaboration. Let other community leaders know AAUW supports diversity, equity, and inclusion by asking, What can we do to support or help you in your efforts to fulfill our common missions and values? Salem, Oregon branch organized a community Ukraine cultural event with music, food. Two members shared personal stories. One of her sons' experience fighting with the Ukrainians, another of growing up in Moscow. Salem, Oregon members helped NAACP during the Juneteenth celebration. We sponsor Salem Speaks for Women, host a refreshment table at the World Beat Festival, and help the League of Women Voters with a voter education booth for kids at the Salem Art Festival. And from these activities, AAUW Salem branch has gained members. Now, when it comes to recognition, Barry Altman counseled us to rethink recognition. Elaborate ceremonies, trophies, gifts of appreciation may bring joy to some, but make others cringe. Recently, I surveyed our members and asked, how would you like to be recognized? 90% said, just a simple thank you will do. A few said, I don't need any thanks. Another few said, well, it might be kind of nice to be a named gift honoree sometime. Effective leaders of volunteers bring joy and satisfaction to members by recognizing each member in ways that gives them joy. The challenge of being a leader of volunteers is to intentionally step outside of yourself and your personal goals and focus on the needs of your members. Making the volunteer experience about the members' fulfillment gives space for member differences, allows them to grow and maintain their identity while engaging in their favorite cause and having a meaningful impact on others. Volunteering is an affair of the heart. Fulfilling the members' volunteer motivators touches their heart, drives their choices for volunteering, and sustains their passion for serving. AAUW California have embraced volunteers first in varying ways, circles of engagement, personally connecting new members, meeting potential members in or near places where they gather. Leaders are experiencing the thrill of increasing engagement and retention of members as they fulfill the mission and the needs of their members. So, developing a volunteer philosophy was a natural outcome of Volunteers First. The AAUW California philosophy is we recognize volunteers are the backbone of our organization. We strive to ensure every volunteer experience is meaningful and empowering. We embrace the Volunteers First philosophy of discovery and care, connection, mutual support, and recognition. Volunteers First leaders put volunteers first.